All right, we're finally on the live stream. So we're going to be continuing with our work here on the BMW E30 project. Here we cut out all of the rust and we're going to be replacing this section with a new piece of sheet metal that I have here. And so I'm just going to get our other ones, including another vertical stream here. So let me get that going. All right, so we're live on both streams now. So we're gonna continue, like I said, with the sheet metal. In this video, we made this piece here, and I'm going to go right into there. We've cut out all of the rust in this section in our BMW E30, cleaned everything up, and now this piece is halfway done, and we're going to be working on this curved piece. We had a bit of difficulty with it, but hopefully we can get it done this time. So that guy will fit right into there. And next up is our curve. All right, so let's show you what we're going to be working with here. Okay, so this is what we're going to be making. This is a curved piece that will fit into that area, and a piece like this. From your hardware store. And I cut it down to 1.5 inches wide, and you can cut that different ways. So you can cut that with an angle grinder like this guy with a cutoff wheel. That'll be your friend. You can pretty much do mostly everything with this guy when it comes to creating sheet metal, cutting sheet metal out, rusted areas, and replacing the sheet metal. You can just put the cutoff wheel on there and use that guy. So what we're going to do next, let me get you set up here. So we're going to take this piece and we're going to measure the length that we need for our curve piece. So this piece here, I kind of wrote it down, it's 5.5 inches long. So I'm just going to mark 5.5 inches. And we'll just go ahead and make another one. When we cut this one, we'll do another 5.5, but we'll go a little bit more for that next cut. Okay. So like I said, you can cut this with, I actually have this other tool as well. So you can cut this with a right angle die grinder with a cutoff wheel, and then angle grinder. We also have some sheet metal shears, so you can cut that with a sheet metal shear as well. So many different options to do it. You don't necessarily have to do it the way we're showing. And then I just use multiple pieces of angle iron sometimes I've got laying around just to, make my marks. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to cut that guy there to length. All right. Okay. Then you got a bunch of other safety stuff. I've got this this face shield here I like to wear, especially when I'm working with any of the cutoff wheels. If those cutoff wheels tend to break while you're cutting something, you don't want anything shooting in your face. So make sure you wear all your proper safety gear, gloves. Be safe when you're doing any of this type of work. them here. We're going to cut more than one. The clamp wasn't down good enough, so you want to make sure you get that clamp good. But we've got it. We've got our 2 plates here. So next up, let me get the light a little bit closer here. Get some more light. We're going to bend these. So for bending these guys, we actually have this brake, the sheet metal brake. So I'm going to get you set up so you can see the sheet metal brake a little bit better, so I can show you how it works. So the sheet metal brake is going to give us that 90-degree bend that we need. So let's get you put up here. Okay. So here we're going to basically bend our shape. So we're going to bend that 90 degrees. And the sheet metal brake here is what's going to allow us to do that. So some sheet metal brakes come with a clamp, with a piece of metal here and then a clamp. This one's a little bit nicer. This goes down, nice piece of metal, and it's got these toggles here to tighten things up. And then you can loosen it. This is from Eastwood. So this is the VersaBend 20. And what we're going to do is we're going to mark where we're going to do our bend. So we're going to do the bend halfway through this, so 3/4 of an inch. So measure that guy. 2 marks on either side so we can line it up. Okay. And loosen this guy, and then you put it in where you want it. Another thing we found out is that depending on how tight you tighten these down, you can get a very hard corner or a little bit of a softer corner. What I mean by that is this here, this little corner here, you can have it really sharp if you have this clamp down all the way down. If you leave it a bit loose, what we found by mistake is you can have a little bit of a curve instead of a really hard corner. So depending on what you're working on your car, right? Like if you want a hard corner, you can, but if you want something that has a little bit more of like a, I don't know what you would call that, kind of like a little smoother corner there, you can keep this a little bit loose. A little thing we found out. For us here, we'll probably want it just a little bit loose. So you'll see what I mean by that, what'll happen. So we put this guy in here, keep that loose, and what'll happen is we want to just make sure that the bend still happens where we want it, but you have a little bit more of a not so hard bend. So probably just tighten that up just a little bit more. It's a little bit too loose. And you just bring it over like so. Just like that. Oh, that's a little bit more. Okay. So now we've got our bend from the sheet metal brake. But there's another way to do this if you don't have a brake. I watched somebody else, and I'll show you what they did. So if you don't have a brake, right? Because not everybody I know has all these different tools. If you're wanting to do something small, we're gonna come over here to this vise. This is a little cool trick that I found somebody else do. You can see our engine in the back. That's actually the engine for the BMW. So that'll be another live. That'll be another project. So, but what you can do is you can, want to use one of these body hammers. You can pick these body hammers up from, say, like Harbor Freight. This is from Harbor Freight, and get them on Amazon. Nothing relatively expensive. I mean, just to get you started, right? When you're learning, right, you can start with something inexpensive and then work your way up to something a bit more expensive as you start to say, hey, I want to do this more. So the way this works is you can actually, we're going to actually hammer the bend into this piece to make that 90 degree. And the way you can do that is, right, you can open up a vise. So you open this vise up, kind of lay it on top of there, right? Get you positioned there so you can see what I'm doing. Right. And I saw this is a little neat. You can hammer the top of that to get the 90 degree bend. So this sheet metal is pretty thin. I don't know if I said it's like 20 gauge or so. So it's going to be a much easier. Not going to be like the prettiest bend. It's not going to be as nice as the brake. And it takes a little bit of practice trying to get it right in the right spot. But as you practice, and then we could take a hammer and continue to take the hammer and flatten that out, say on the other part here. So you can start to smoothen that out if you want. Now this definitely has much more of a curve to it. Again, it doesn't look super pretty, but that's just showing you another way, right, that you can use a hammer with some force to maybe create a bend. If we had a hammer maybe with a little bit of a sharper bend here, we would then get a sharper 90 degree bend here. You can kind of play around adjusting the vise a bit, right, to kind of but I thought that was kind of neat, is that there's different ways that you can shape the metal with just some practice. So now, once we've got that finished, we actually need to, make this curve. So, if we come back here, right, so there's our piece, and it needs to have a curve to it. And so next up is going to be how we make the curve. And that's with these tools here. So let me show you these tools. So this is actually a stretcher. This is going to stretch the metal. And then I have one over here. This is actually the shrinker. So let me get you in better position. Show you kind of what we can do with these guys. This is where we were struggling on the last live, is actually using the shrinker and stretcher. Okay. So the way these work is you push down on these handles, and these teeth will manipulate the metal as the dies press into the metal. So I'm going to show you, this is the shrinker. Let me just get you a little bit. So they're pressing together. So what I mean by that is you want to bite the metal. You don't want the metal, and kind of by that. It's either going to stretch the metal apart, these dies here, and push down. If you can kind of see what's happening there, it is I snap and not what we want to do. So we actually got this from East. And so, we saw of this particular die, and they sent us a new pair. You can remove these dies and put them back in. So there's some screws here where you can remove, change the die. So the shrinker, or I'm sorry, the stretcher, what it's going to do as this you kind of put in there, it's going to pull, the metal has to go somewhere. What you have with the sheet metal, and you're putting it into, especially the stretcher, what I noticed with very thin sheet metal, you can stretch it so much that actually, so this is the, you can stretch it so much that actually, so this is the issue we have. Now you could go and just tack weld that, and that you wouldn't have a problem. So, I mean, we could use this, but I'll show you, how we're using it, and just have to go steady when it comes to super thin. You would probably maybe want to go with like 18, but for this sheet metal, so the there is, there's more there. So one way I like to do custom with a K is talk about metal being like, so tossed. Have you ever seen people toss dough in the air and make pizza, and the pizza gets bigger and bigger as the dough is being thrown in the air, and what's stretching, right? The pizza gets bigger. And so the same thing here, right? So we can keep on stretching, and just like pizza, if it gets too thin, what happens? It just tears, right? And that's essentially what's happening here with the sheet metal too. So if you're ever kind of thinking like, okay, how is this working? Like when I'm using the, and I'm stretching the metal out, it's getting thinner in that place. You're using the hammer or using these dies in order to stretch. Now, the shrinker works in the opposite direction. The shrinker is in fact going to pull the metal together, just like dough, is you want to maybe pinch dough at the outer edge to make sort of like a thicker crust, right? Maybe, and then maybe you form, maybe you put the the dough, you fold it on itself and it gets thicker. So here, right, it's going to get thicker as we shrink it, but then it's going to get smaller. So what will happen is this curve will actually go in the opposite direction. It'll want to pull in. So our goal is for our curved piece we want to go outward like this one. And so let's have at it. Okay. So basically, this guy gets mounted to our welding table with a bolt at the bottom. And so we want that piece of metal to, again, curve out. So we're going to stretch this out and make this curve. So we usually like to start in the middle. And again, you don't necessarily want to push the whole piece in. And that's kind of what we were doing last time. And after watching a couple of other guys, that, you know, so if you're pushing this all the way in, then you're stretching this whole piece, right? We want to stretch just the outer part, not the inner part. The outer part, so it can start to curve outward. So this will have, you know, think about it, more surface area. This will have less, and then that'll want to pull this metal out. And again, you got to kind of be gentle with this, because if you do it too hard, you can just pull the metal apart and then it'll just separate. So slow and steady is kind of the name of the game here, from what we've kind of realized by working on it. So, you know, we just, you know, light pressure, and you can start to see teeth of where the die is grabbing. It's pulling it apart in this section. So there we go. Let me put my gloves on. And what we've noticed is that it takes a bit of work and patience on this guy. And kind of what we do is just move it a little bit. And again, not pushing it all the way in. We don't want to do this. We want to do kind of like that. All right, see, I did that. So here, there's a, so as you push your down, this can be a while. But it's just steady. The center. Now, I've seen other people, I watched a ton of videos on this. Some people, you know, kind of do this. I haven't noticed since their year, you know, slamming down on it versus, you know, just taking it slow and easy. I do kind of know, like, if I just put my full weight into this thing, it's easy to tear. So that's why, you know, I'm just taking the stretch seems to take a lot longer than the shrinker. Doesn't really tear them out easy because it's just flying that onto itself. But yeah, any tips for anybody as well. If you're watching this and have tips or special tricks, no. So don't go every. If we were to say put this up to its starting to curve. Let's see, can we put that on the straight? Starting to curve. Barely, but it's starting to make its way. So let me actually lower this a little bit so you can get a close-up. Kind of see this in action. So, oh, really can't really see from that angle. So maybe we can go from the top down. See a little bit better. There we go. Yeah, you can see the tripod, but I'd like for you guys to be able to kind of see this thing in action a little bit. Let's do this. Move it up. There we go. Okay. So again, not here, but probably about halfway